Hold on. And 3, 2, 1.
It's Danny and Fred, little Crip Trip podcast.
Danny and I are in Edmonton chatting over Zoom with our guests Meagan McAteer and Michelle Asgarali in Toronto.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Crip Trip podcast episode. Today I'm joined by
Meagan McAteer.
and
Michelle Asgarali.
there we go, producer and director extraordinaire. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are excited to have a conversation about, disability and film. We know you are both prolific producers on the Canadian side of the border, and we've worked together in the past on CBC's Push, and Michelle, recently you've been working on Breaking Character and are now taking a bit of a sabbatical, but still working.
Yeah.
Is that
I
accurate?
like to call it the mat leave without babies. Yeah.
And Meagan, what have you been up to as of late?
I finished up on Breaking Character, and I'm through a few different Discovery documentary series. So I'm on a new Discovery project at the moment.
Awesome. So I kind of want to give people a kind of brief encapsulation of your two careers. Can you guys go into a little bit about how you got your start and kind of where you're at nowadays?
Michelle, you take it away.
I went to Sheridan College for media arts way back in the day. So trained in film and television, and focused mainly in doc at the time. Graduated, and was already like, oh, now I need a break. After the intensive, 3 years. Ended up doing a lot of teaching assistants through Sheridan afterwards, which got me back in, and then doing a lot of research. But what ended getting me into actually working again in actual consistent work was I got a chance to intern, I guess we would say, our mentorship program with Employable Me, the production company THA Media, and working under Katie Lafferty and working with Ryan Miley and in that crew and seeing how they worked. And I did a lot of that remotely, but got a good sense of how a production could work and still care at the same time, which kind of gave me more energy again to kind of hit the world again and try and start creating my own pieces. After working at Sheridan for a couple of the teachers, one of which was Ian Thompson, who is one of the executive producers of Winter House Films, got to work with them to pitch a whole bunch of AMI content ideas to them, as you both now know how and what that's like. And within that, Breaking Character was one of the first real concepts that I was really excited about, and kind of a bit of a personal project and a bit of a just interesting space to start. And luckily that was the one that they said, hey, this is interesting. What's this going to be about? And it follows the lives of performers with disabilities and what it's like to hustle in it. We know the behind the scenes, but that added pressure of being, different people and different content in front of the camera, needing to be able to have that pitch and then also support themselves with whatever needs that they need on that side of things. Just wanted to know what it was going to be like. And it was really important that when we originally did the casting, that we got a range of people and different disabilities, different, media and different talents and interests, that it wasn't just, all actors, all singers, or wheelchair user, something within that space, because it's so different for everyone. Just want to know what that's like. And luckily, in doing so, one of our participants, Ty, in season 1, was starting to work as an advisor on a short film. And we're like, oh my gosh, can we see what that's like? Can we follow that? And the director of that was Meagan. So we met her, talked to her behind the scenes and on camera. And Ian and Karen on that shoot day were like, oh, wait, you do a lot of lifestyle and a lot of documentary and reality. And would you be interested to kind of do a couple of days or a few days directed within our team? And then we never looked back. It felt like Meagan was by the side. Hey, Meagan, do you want to do something? Hey, Meagan, I got this. Hey, Meagan. And from then on, so I think it really opened my eyes personally. I think it's growing in the last 5 years of what it means within the community, disability community, but also in the industry, and everything's changed so much that my own perspective of what it's like and what it could be like is completely changed from, even just in school, like what it should be like. Meg, your turn.
Thanks. So I, like Michelle, also went to film school. I went to York University's film production, film and video production program for a BFA way back in the beginning of the 2000s, and started working relatively quickly while still in school, because I'm, downtown Toronto, and I wanted to get as much, real life experience as possible. So I started working in commercials as a production assistant, and kind of never looked back as far as the work. I just kind of kept working from that day. So I've been working in the industry relatively nonstop, aside from a global pandemic, for over nearly 20 years, it seems like at this point, like close to 20 years now. And so I was in commercials for about 4 or 5 years, and then transitioned into television, into the documentary reality lifestyle space, which is a lot of the content that's made here in Toronto. And kind of never looked back. And so when I started in television, I think within like 4 years, I was series directing and starting to produce. And so it's just kind of been project to project to project through that time, where you suddenly blink and you realize a decade has gone by, or another 5 years have gone by. And through that process, in that transition from leaving school and entering the industry, is when I was diagnosed with MS. And so that was sort of something in the background this whole time as my career was developing. And it wasn't something that I necessarily in the beginning talked about very often. There was a few close people who knew, but over time, it became a bigger part of the conversation with colleagues, especially colleagues I had worked with for years at that point, and for some of them decades. And then when the global pandemic hit, that was the first sort of break that I gave myself in a long time. And through that break, decided to do a master's degree in media production. And through that,
took a break and did a master's.
But it was sort of the first time I wasn't doing something for money. It was which can happen, as we live in a capitalist world. We have to make money and pay bills, and it is a thing. And so I had this moment where I was like, do I even like what I'm doing? Am I contributing? Especially when you work in some of this content, especially if you veer towards reality content. There are shows that like I would never do, and like you kind of like what am I contributing to the world through the content that I'm making and participating in? And I want to do as little harm as possible in that sense. So I took the opportunity to take that time away officially and do the master's degree, and through that work, confronting a global pandemic at the same time was sort of much more thrust into a disability-centered space, where I was thinking about the world through a disability lens much more acutely. And so that that transition into the work that I started doing through the program and through my thesis work led me into really like head on into disability centered spaces, where for the first time in my professional life, I was coming out talking officially about my diagnosis and my participation in the community and sort of what I could see for the community going forward. And so, like Michelle referenced, through that thesis work, I did a paper called Accessibility and the Apocalypse, looking at sort of disability representation and apocalyptic media and sort of disaster science muddled through there. And then ended up doing a short film as sort of a best practices example through that process, where I met Ty Young, who was a cast member of Breaking Character Season 1. And had Ty come onto my project as an acting mentor for my first time ever actor that I was working with. And through that process, met up with Michelle and the team at Winterhouse. And again, in that sort of like confluence of events, just kind of had our great first shoot day and like had a little like aside chat with Ian and Karen. And they were like, oh, do you want to direct this show? Like, you could join our team. And which was wonderful. And so worked with Winterhouse for Breaking Character Season 1 and Season 2, which was amazing. They got another second season, which is fantastic. And through that work, have been trying to like push forward doing more disability centered projects. So that's where CBC's Push came up, which again, Michelle, yourself and I all were a part of.
Drink a glass of water. We said push 3 times.
Oh my gosh. I just got a flashback, Michelle. This is very reminiscent of our Push days. This living in the Zoom world.
If you say push 3 times, Brian McPherson shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so since completing the degree and working with amazing producers like Michelle, I've really tried to push forward in a more conscientious space of like disability centered programming whenever possible. So when there are shows like on opportunities to work in a disability centered way, I'm absolutely there. And through that process, I also was put in touch with the sort of disability screen office that eventually became the disability screen office. And I'm working with the disability screen office, the CMF and Telefilm to create the best practices guide that I'll be writing in the next couple of months. So
I guess this is kind of an open question, but what differences have you two noticed over time, especially, kind of going through COVID, how that's affected the film industry specifically as it relates to disability? Have you noticed much of a change?
Meagan? I was going to say, when Meagan took her pause, it became the busiest time for me. And I found it was busier for many different people because remote opened up the world that you could not only work, but join festivals and discussions and network that were very closed and very, very, not elite, but like just inaccessible, both physically, but also monetarily, like just to try and go somewhere.
Double all your costs to get a care worker out there and then be able to network and all the rest of it. Yeah, it's
exactly. And being able to do that from home changed a lot of the practices. I think it also, although it's sad to see that a lot of those spaces and work that has been made during COVID, everyone's like, okay, we can figure this out.
Yeah.
Kind of clawing back and trying to go, quote unquote, back to normal.
Yeah.
But within that time period, everyone figured out that they could access things. They could change and add an entirely different being on set to work on COVID practices, to clean, to make sure safety is involved. Which is pretty much similar to any kind of disability space, is having just support, having other people added to the traditional tiny film team that's going out. So they know that it's possible.
Yeah,
but
I
there
think
is
that
also,
was.
Yeah, go ahead for it.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the experience of COVID was extraordinarily educational. I don't know that the lesson has been learned by everyone.
Yeah.
But I think suddenly being aware that within months we could figure out as an entire entity, as an industry, how to find 20% of our budgets and allocate that to health and safety practices. If we can do that, if we can all pull together and figure out systems and structures and timelines, and again, within like 4 to 6 months of a global pandemic, there's no reason we can't figure out similar processes for disability budgets and accommodation allocation and all sorts of other things that would make our industry that much more accessible. So I think the process or the realization of like COVID measures was really informative, and I think has created an example that we can apply in future to other aspects of what we're hoping to sort of achieve as an industry-wide practice. But I think to Michelle's point, there has been a clawing back. Like I, for example, right now I'm on my first project where I'm working in office again for the first time since COVID. And so I'm fully masked in an office where some people mask, but most people don't mask. And thankfully, it's an office where there's a huge amount of respect for COVID protocols, and it's still part of our contracts, and it's still part of our like signatory agreements. And everyone is aware of my health status, and like I'm comfortable sharing that and talking to people. So people check in with me and make sure things are okay, and like offer me solutions if there are things happening in the office. For example, if there's an event where there's additional people coming into the office, or if someone is sick, I'm immediately notified. And so I feel as much as possible it's being taken care of, but it's a mandatory be in the office situation. It wasn't offered to me to be able to work at home. So I think it's creating, like, I think all the things we learned and the ways we adapted, people are like, okay, but it's over. But it's not over for everybody in that sense. So
Well,
I do think the other big thing is not about industry, it's about the community. I think the disability community has found ways to connect more in that space, especially within the creator space. That didn't exist before because we were all kind of working in isolation. But there are more opportunities to connect and figure out that we do exist. And I think it's also that bleed into that space that the higher up industry realizes, oh wait, there's more of you. Like, because always the question was like, oh well, we can't make it because I don't know anyone that I can find that could actually do it. Like they don't exist. Oh, an actor like this doesn't exist. So if I write this part, what am I going to do with it? Or if I, need a director, how can I get a director to actually tell this story, or a writer, or whichever within that space? But because we can be seen or included in more spaces, they know how to reach out a little bit more. Like, I'm not saying it's perfect, not even close, but at least there's an awareness that exists.
Well, and, one thing we always talk about in the disability space is, when we work on these kind of accommodations, it kind of benefits everybody, right? So now if you're sick, you're not, having to come into work and contaminate the whole place. I mean, a lot of able-bodied people realized that, going to the office was pretty, there wasn't much logic to it anymore, right? We, for Crip Trip, created a editing
remote
system that is completely remote, so editors can screen share in and edit on a single PC. So like it did fundamentally shift the workforce and kind of what we're capable
However,
of.
I mean, like the technology allows us, we can hire people anywhere, but the tax credits still
Yeah, of course.
keep us from hiring people outside of our community. So it's,
For sure.
it's true.
Yeah.
Editors are very good at holding on to their things. I would say, like, within the industry, if something is changing, the editors have changed it first. They're very good. They band together well. They speak from one voice very often. And so of all the discussion we were just having about COVID measures being clawed back, editors have not shifted. Editors can work wherever they want, whenever they want. And good for them.
Yeah.
well, it's better from a business point of view too. I mean, again, if we're not just talking about provincial tax credits and the limits those place, but even for like U.S. places, you could hire the top 10 best editors in the world, and so long as you have a semi-functional internet connection, you can do that. Whereas before, the flights, the hotels, the dangers of in person, all these things. Now they're gone. It's pretty cool.
Not
Very
to
true.
mention the cost of a workspace. You no
Yeah,
longer-
Yeah.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like me, Michelle, and Megan, season one of Push did all of our story meetings on Zoom, and we formed the Crip cabal, and we were, we had our morning chats, and that's how I got a lot of my directorial mentorship and story producing mentorship that I've taken into Crip Trip and season 2 of Push and all the rest of it.
I story produced that show completely remotely. I never got to meet half the people in person.
Michelle and I only met like last year.
Yeah.
Was it this
Oh,
year?
wow.
Is it still in 2024?
Yeah,
Wow.
last year maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in person. But we know so many intimate details about each other.
Well, I mean, it didn't prevent you from building rapport with people, like
Oh, gosh, no.
they were still calling you up mid set, right? Like, yeah. It's so like
we've been able to create some amazing connection, like the way that Michelle and I have adapted to our work environments together. Like, Push aside, like there was obviously like a distance issue. Michelle was in Ontario and we were shooting the show in Edmonton. I was present in Edmonton, so Michelle was not able to be there. Thankfully, we had yourself and Carly on the team, and so. But when it came to breaking character, for example, season 2, like earbuds that I'm wearing right now, Michelle would be in my ear on interview day because catching up to typing through like notes when we were like live interviewing somebody, it was just easier for me to have Michelle in my ear so I could check in with her. She could sort of like check in with me and make sure that she and I were both getting what we wanted from the interviews. And so, yeah, we've created some amazing systems that have worked really smoothly
Yeah.
and enhanced the timing of things, actually.
I love I think it's part of my psyche of watching too much TV, but being able to watch on a screen of what's happening than necessarily being in the room. Sometimes it's a pain.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh my God, I just want to jump in because something's going off. But for a lot of the times for story, I find it very useful looking through the computer screen to seeing what works and being able to mute myself from everybody else so I can type or dictate or do whatever I need to do to be able to talk to Megan directly or to whoever the director is within that space.
So we've talked about a couple, fundamental shifts in the creator's sphere in disability. Both of you are involved in the DSO in different capacities, right?
Yeah, so I just started, today was our welcome session, very exciting, of the Disability Producers Lab, which the NSI, or National Screen Institute, is creating for us or helping us manage. Ophira Kaloff and I are co-leading a group of 5 emerging producers, disabled producers, and examining accessible practices. Like the whole point is let's deconstruct how we do these things, learn some of those fundamentals, and also figure out where access fits in and how to, change that process. So all of our burnout problems can be dealt with ideally, and along with Women in View, the DSO is also one of the co-developers of the program. So it's been great being able to work with them.
And I heard a good quote once, and it was, care work is done in the budget lines, right? So having these things where you have concrete data about, this is an acceptable margin of budget for things like care work or transportation, or helps you as potentially an organization come up with programming to help create stipends for creators too.
It can be a full-time job just to figure out how to get a power wheelchair on a plane.
Yep.
Like,
The amount of hours people have spent on the phone with Air Canada only being fed completely wrong information is frankly astounding.
well, we're flying back like getting from New York to Calgary, but Calgary to Edmonton, the plane is like not the plane we were told, and we have like certain height restrictions on where the wheelchair can go, and it's like, what?
But
What
even from the time when we spent making Pain and Offering, where we were shooting in Victoria, I had watched the improvement in the airlines over the course of like a couple years, and I'm like, okay, they're starting to pay attention to, when
Minds of.
when
It's paying attention to the people who are
Yeah.
taking to social media
Yeah.
in their
And shaming
completely
them.
distracted
Yeah.
moment and going, look what they did to me. I am now abroad and trapped.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, the surprised look on my face when I saw an airline that had a completely separate cargo container for my wheelchair.
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
like, I've never seen that before.
Along with two specialists who came and talked to us,
yeah,
and prepped the chair for travel. Never seen that before.
yeah,
Oof.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But then it's like then the next leg of the flight, the small one, you're like, where did all this go? Why do we have help? Why is the plane smaller? So it's like they're making strides.
Yeah.
But they need to cover the whole trip.
yeah.
Like,
Well, and like,
Inconsistencies.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and like bigger airports, more resources. Smaller airports, not as much, right? So it's, it's a constant balancing act. But kind of circling back to film, what are some solutions or programming that you would like to see to help disabled creators in the film industry?
I think, I'm really excited about the disability project that Michelle is working on right now, the producers lab, and the writers lab was something that happened. I've gone through 2 sessions, I think. Is that correct, Michelle?
I'm not
I think-
sure. I know they did their first. AWL was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
sure
feel like
if
there
they
was
did
I think they did a secondary one, but Ophira perhaps wasn't available at that time, but they did a second one as well. And so I think these amazing labs where we're actually getting to like work with much more direct contact with disabled creators and sort of understand sort of their needs and their wants based on projects and just to understand sort of the range of projects that people are working on. It's extremely informative. And I think my brain turned off. Sorry. Just wait a second. Actually, Michelle, you can take it for a second.
I was going to say, I think we really need to connect with the outside world a bit more than Canada. That's what we're hoping we get to do a little bit more in this program too, is not just look inside. But the UK, I mean, the amount of work that have been able to do, like in 5 years, I'm sure it was much, much longer, but the progress that they've made in 5 years seems, when you look at it now and you're like, oh, that seems reasonable, like that sounds right. But if you look at it compared to us, it's like,
Yeah.
you can do that? Really? Broadcasters can mandate that your production spaces are accessible or they won't fund you? What? That, like, that push is amazing of what they were able to do in the States. All of the different, there's at least 3 main organizations and researchers and spaces that not only give funding but are educating to connect people. I think is one of the largest things to do. The DSO is brand new, right? Like they're very young and trying, but there's so much work to be done, and everybody's just wants answers basically right now. Like they're like, yes, we want to make this content, tell me how, and give me all of the resource to do it. But you need the research, you need the fundamentals, you need the understanding behind it to be able to get it done. And
That's what
That
we're in
takes
the
time.
process of building, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think not only is the DSO young, but the Canadian industry with respect to disability inclusion is quite young. We're at least 5, if not 8 years behind the UK model, the Australian model, probably about 5 years behind the US model. And we are a small player in those spaces in that we are much less funded. The UK model was able to make much larger strides because they have more networks that are government funded, that are connected and have public buy-in for more networks there. We have CBC and a few like AMI, amazing, but like access is really small in terms of its reach.
Yeah.
And so in our market, we're very much the kid sister of the US market. We are making American content in our country primarily, like end result will end up on American networks and American streaming platforms. So we just have less pull in a lot of ways. But I think like my point I was trying to make earlier before my brain shut off for a second there. I think what's amazing about these projects that are looking at sort of inception spaces, so producers lab and the writers lab, you're looking at idea creation and ideation in general. And I think for the industry to really start making strides, we have to be thinking about disability before you're writing the project, while you're getting the funding, while you're building the budget. Like these are not things that need to be shoehorned in later. These are things that need to be organically woven into the fabric of the creative project from day one. And I think, in the development of what we're working for in the industry and with the DSO, we're sort of like on the coattails of other major movements that have happened over the same period of time, including like the BIPOC film and television movement and sort of their push to get sort of networks signatory to hiring BIPOC creators and BIPOC people in roles. And I think,
And ensuring that they're owned by the communities
absolutely.
that are-
Yeah.
IP is important.
Absolutely. And so I think, we are coming on the coattails of a lot of the other great movements that have made some strides. But in that, we're still sort of on the back burner a little bit, and we need to keep pushing to make ourselves and our voices louder in the conversation. And so I think we've got some really great support from big players in our industry like CMF and the Telefilm and some other major bodies. But we just need to keep pushing that forward and remind people that we are here, we are part of the viewership, we are part of the creator class. We just need to keep getting access.
Awesome. And I think on that note, we should wrap up.
That was a very good extra.
That was perfect. I had
that
no
was
notes. But thank you two so much for joining me. Before I head out, are there any projects that you want to plug and anything you got on the go?
One of our mutual colleagues, Violet, is part of the Producers Lab, and she's got one of my short films as part of her project. So I'm hopeful that she gets some really great insights and development through the Producers Lab, and that we actually maybe can come through the end of that and push forward with producing the short film. So that's exciting.
Awesome.
Speaking of Violet, we just she was out in Cannes for MIPCon. Representing a show that I produced called The Squeaky Wheel, which is comedy-based satire and disability news format, which we were nominated for Diversifying TV Award in Disability Work in Scripting. So it was great just to have her in that space and realizing and starting the fight already within her of going, wait a minute, this is not as accessible as it should be.
Yep.
I know. Soon as she sent the text message to say, unfortunately, we didn't win. But also, there wasn't even a ramp onto the stage. How would have I even gone up there?
Yep.
Yeah, it was one
great.
of those moments, like super excited and then going, oh, we have work to do,
Yes,
Turn on,
we
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
We do have work to do.
Well, we'll get out there and, start building those blocks.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
look forward to seeing what the DSO will have coming up. It's very cool that we have this organization. Awesome that you guys are working with them and making stuff happen.
Yeah. And we'll be seeing much more of each other in the future. I think we all know that.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Watch on AMI-TV or stream for free on AMI+.
TVO, Media Education Group. Catapult Pictures. Looking for more Crip Trip? Stream the series now on AMI+.